What's it like to be the man who first believed in Jobs enough to back his early venture? Our next guest knows. Ronald Wayne knew Steve Jobs from working with him at Atari. He joined forces with Jobs and Woz to form Apple in 1976. He sold his 10% stake just days later for a few $100s. Today, that stake would be worth an incredible $35 billion. Ron joins us today from Las Vegas. Welcome to this special edition of Bloomberg West, Ron. I'm so curious, what did you see in Steve Jobs in those very early days that convinced you to invest?
Well, actually, I had no real investment in it other than my contribution of philosophical resolution between himself and Steve Wozniak, and cabinet design and doing some technical things for him that were of help to the company. But I was very happy to participate with them for the thrill and excitement of being a part of something that was really possessed of enormous promise, and something that I felt was going to be very, very successful. Although I also felt it was going to be something of a roller coaster, which since I was 20 years older than these guys, I felt I was perhaps getting a little too old for.
Well, it was successful, and it was a roller coaster at times, Ron. You did leave, though, just days later. You sold your stake. What was Steve Jobs' reaction when you pulled out?
They understood why I was pulling out, that I had other interests, that there was a modest question of liability, since it was a company and not a corporation, that if the thing blew up, I was going to be pretty much left with a $15,000 obligation that I had no idea how I would satisfy. The real driver there was the fact that a couple of years before, I'd had my own corporation designing and building gaming machines in Las Vegas, but it didn't take me long to realize that I really had no business being in business. I was a better engineer than I was a businessman. And I had spent, after the company failed, I had spent the next year and a half buying my way out of it. And that rather traumatic situation influenced, at least in one respect, my reasons for leaving the enterprise.
Regret is a powerful thing, Ron. Have you asked yourself over the years, as you've watched Apple soar to the top of the world, why did I pull out?
No, I've never regretted pulling out. I mean, I'm as enamored with money as anyone else. But I knew that it was going to be a considerable strain. And as I say, I was 20 years older than these fellows, and they were absolute whirlwinds, aside from the fact that they were intellectual giants, which I recognized. It was like having a tiger by the tail. You can't hang on, you can't let go. And I figured that it was possibly, if I stayed with them, I was going to wind up the richest man in the cemetery. So I figured it was best for me to go off and do other things. But even as I left, I also continued to assist them with the logo and a cabinet design and various other things, because I wanted to help in any way I could.
You never owned an Apple product in your life, Ron, but recently you got an iPad. What did you think?
It's a spectacular device, but the problem was, since I'm not cognizant or technically skilled in modern equipment, I'm really not. At age 77, I've sort of outgrown the growth of these things. I gave the device to my son to learn how to use it, and then he was going to teach me how to use it, without realizing, of course, that my chances of ever getting it back were somewhere between slim and none, and slim's out of town.
Sounds like a typical kid. You've had the benefit of knowing Steve very early on, then watching him from afar climb the ladder to become the leader of the most valuable technology in the world. What do you think Steve Jobs will be remembered for?
Obviously, for being the most dynamic driver of telecommunications technology in the 20th century. His skills, his ability, his talent for recognizing talent and skills in others, and his ability in gathering these people around him and focusing them on his vision of what future products should be.
How big a loss is this for the world of technology, for the world in general?
incalculable. It is a true tragedy that Steve Jobs, at 56, with so much potential ahead of him and so much creativity, we can only imagine what might have come out of his mind had he had the 20 years extra of life that I've had.
All right, Ron Wayne, the third Apple co-founder, thanks so much for joining us here on this special edition of Bloomberg West.